In a city where luxury and invisibility collided, a 73-year-old janitor dropped his mop and ran toward a collapsing pregnant woman outside a penthouse suite. Her billionaire husband screamed for help, but hotel staff froze. No one knew what to do. Except him. With hands that once held beating hearts as a surgeon, he saved her life in seconds. But when the millionaire tried to repay him, the old man refused everything and whispered something that shattered him. "This isn't the first time I saved your wife." What he asked for next brought the most powerful man in the city to tears. The marble floors of the Azure Grand Hotel gleamed under crystal chandeliers, reflecting a world where every detail whispered wealth and perfection. But perfection shattered in an instant when Mia Cole's knees buckled outside the penthouse suite on the 42nd floor. Her hand reached for the doorframe, fingers trembling, before her body collapsed entirely. The dull thud of her fall echoed through the hallway like a crack in reality itself. Adrian Cole, her husband, billionaire real estate mogul, a man who commanded boardrooms and bent cities to his will, dropped to his knees beside her, his voice breaking into something raw and desperate. "Mia, somebody help! Help!" His screams bounced off the ivory walls, but the luxury around them suddenly felt hollow, useless. Hotel managers in crisp suits rushed forward, their faces pale with panic. Staff members froze mid-step, eyes wide, mouths open. Guests peeked out from their rooms, filming on their phones, whispering, staring, but no one moved. No one knew what to do. And then, through the paralysis, came the sound of something clattering to the floor. A yellow mop bucket tipped over, dirty water spilling across the pristine marble. An old man in a faded gray uniform, thin, bent-shouldered, invisible to most, dropped everything and ran. His name was Mr. Ellis. He was 73 years old. He'd cleaned these halls for 11 years. And right now, he was the only person moving with purpose. He knelt beside Mia with a calm that didn't belong to the chaos around him. His weathered hands moved to check her pulse, her breathing, her position. Adrian stared at him, confused, terrified, clinging to hope he didn't understand yet. The managers hovered, uncertain whether to stop him or step aside. Someone whispered, "Should we let him?" But Mr. Ellis didn't wait for permission. He'd already begun. What no one in that hallway knew, what Adrian himself didn't know yet, was that this wouldn't be the first time Mr. Ellis saved Mia's life. And what he would ask for in return would bring the most powerful man in the city to his knees, not in fear, but in something far more humbling. Something that would change them all forever. Mr. Ellis had long ago accepted his place in the hierarchy of the Azure Grand Hotel. He was furniture, wallpaper, a gray-uniformed ghost who appeared when messes needed cleaning and disappeared the moment they were gone. Guests brushed past him without a glance, the designer shoes clicking across floors he'd just polished, leaving scuff marks he'd polish again. Management acknowledged him only to criticize. A smudge on a mirror, a trash bin not emptied fast enough. Younger staff spoke over him during break-room conversations, as if his 73 years of life had earned him nothing worth hearing. He moved slowly through the halls, his joints aching in the mornings, his hands roughened by years of chemicals and labor. But his eyes never stopped watching. He noticed things others missed. The businessman on the 9th floor who drank alone every night. The couple on 14 who smiled in the lobby, but argued behind closed doors. The pregnant women who stayed in the suites, rubbing their swollen bellies with that mixture of joy and anxiety he recognized too well. He always paid extra attention to them. Paused a moment longer when emptying their trash. Made sure their rooms were especially clean, their towels especially soft. Nobody knew why. Nobody asked. To them, he was just the old janitor doing his job. But to Mr. Ellis, every pregnant woman he saw carried a ghost he couldn't save. A memory that woke him at 3 in the morning, gasping in the dark. And today, when Mia collapsed, that ghost finally gave him a chance at redemption. Mia's breathing had turned shallow and rapid, each inhale a struggle that barely moved her chest. Her skin, moments ago flushed with panic, was now turning a frightening shade of pale gray. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath Mr. Ellis's fingertips, thready, irregular, fading. Around them, the chaos intensified. Adrian's hands shook as he cradled her head, his voice breaking into desperate pleas that meant nothing to her unconscious body. The hotel manager shouted into his phone, arguing with emergency dispatch about response times. Another manager suggested waiting for the hotel's on-call physician. Someone else insisted they shouldn't move her. Everyone had an opinion. No one had a plan. And then Mr. Ellis's voice cut through the noise, not loud, but absolute. Move back. Give her a. It wasn't a request. Staff members obeyed without thinking, shuffling backward as if his words carried an authority they couldn't question. He loosened the collar of Mia's silk blouse with practiced precision, his weathered fingers moving with a sureness that contradicted his frail appearance. Someone get me pillows. Now. A housekeeper ran. He elevated Mia's legs carefully, adjusting the angle with the kind of exactness that comes from muscle memory, not guesswork. Then he leaned close to her face, his voice dropping to something gentle, almost paternal. Mia, I know you're scared, but you're going to be okay. Your baby's going to be okay. Just breathe with me. Slow. In and out. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steady, warm, grounding. And somehow, impossibly, her breathing began to even out. Her eyelids fluttered. Color started creeping back into her cheeks. Adrian stayed, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. This man, this janitor who'd been invisible 30 seconds ago, was saving his wife's life with a competence that made everyone else in the hallway look like amateurs. How do you know what to do? Adrian whispered, but Mr. Ellis didn't answer. His focus stayed entirely on Mia. The paramedics burst through the stairwell doors 6 minutes later, equipment clattering, radios crackling. They assessed Mia quickly, checked her vitals, exchanged glances. The lead paramedic looked up at the crowd. Whoever stabilized her before we got here saved her life. Textbook response. Eyes turned toward the hotel manager, who opened his mouth to speak, but Mr. Ellis had already stepped back into the shadows, blending into the walls like he'd never been there at all. The manager accepted the praise with a tight nod, and the crowd began to disperse, crisis averted. But Adrian didn't move. He watched the old janitor pick up his mop bucket, his mind racing with a question no one else seemed to be asking. Why does a janitor know exactly how to save someone from an embolism? At the hospital, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the emergency wing, the doctors delivered the news Adrian had been praying for. Mia was stable. The baby was safe. But it had been close, dangerously close. One of the doctors, a sharp-eyed woman with silver-streaked hair, pulled Adrian aside. Whoever intervened before the paramedics arrived bought her critical time. That kind of stabilization doesn't happen by accident. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. Adrian nodded slowly, her words settling into him like stones. He left the hospital that night with one thought consuming him. He had to find Mr. Ellis. He had to thank him. He had to repay him. Men like Adrian Cole didn't leave debts unpaid, especially debts this profound. The next morning, he returned to the Azure Grand with an envelope thick with cash and a list of offers rehearsed in his mind. A penthouse suite for life. A job for Ellis's family. Stock options. Whatever it took. He found Mr. Ellis in a service hallway on the 16th floor, pushing his cat, moving as slowly and quietly as ever. Mr. Ellis, Adrian called out, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. The old man stopped, turned, his expression unreadable. Adrian approached, pulling out the envelope. I don't know how to thank you for what you did. You saved my wife. You saved my child. Please, let me do something for you. Anything. Name it. Mr. Ellis looked down at the envelope, then back up at Adrian. His tired eyes held something Adrian couldn't quite place. Sadness, maybe, or resignation. I don't want your money, Mr. Cole, he said softly. Adrian blinked, confused. Then what? A better job? A house? Just tell me what you need. Mr. Ellis shook his head and began to turn away. Adrian's hand shot out, stopping him. Wait, please. Why won't you let me repay you? For a long moment, Mr. Ellis said nothing. Then, so quietly Adrian almost missed it, he spoke. Son, this isn't the first time I've helped your wife. Adrian's heart stopped. His grip loosened. What do you mean? But Mr. Ellis didn't answer. He just looked at Adrian with those ancient, knowing eyes, and walked away, his cartwheels squeaking softly down the empty hall, leaving Adrian standing there, frozen, his mind spinning with a question that would haunt him for days. What did he mean? Adrian couldn't sleep. The question looped endlessly in his mind, each repetition tightening the knot in his chest. This isn't the first time I've helped your wife. What did that mean? How was it possible? He'd met Mia 5 years ago at a charity gala. She'd been working in event planning, poised and confident, nothing like someone who needs saving. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized how little he knew about her life before him. She'd mentioned working various jobs to put herself through college, struggling to make ends meet, but she rarely spoke about those years. They felt like chapters she'd closed and never reopened. At 3 in the morning, Adrian made a decision. He called the Azure Grand's head of security, woke him up, and demanded access to the hotel's archives, employee records, security footage, incident reports, everything going back a decade. By dawn, he was sitting in a windowless basement office, surrounded by file boxes and flickering computer monitors, scrolling through years of data with the obsessive focus of a man chasing ghosts. And then he found it, a grainy security recording from 7 years ago, time-stamped 11:47 p.m. The lobby was nearly empty, the marble floors reflecting the dim glow of safety lights. And there, behind the front desk, was Mia. But not the Mia he knew. This was someone younger, thinner, exhausted in a way that went deeper than a long shift. Her uniform hung slightly loose on her frame. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She was alone, filing paperwork, when suddenly she swayed. Her hand reached for the desk, missed, and she crumpled to the floor like a marionette with its strings cut. Adrian's breath caught. He leaned closer to the screen, his heart pounding. For several seconds, nothing happened. The camera showed her lying there, motionless, vulnerable, while the lobby remained eerily silent. No guests, no managers, no one. And then, from the edge of the frame, a figure appeared. An older man in a gray uniform, moving faster than his age should have allowed. Mr. Ellis. Adrian watched, transfixed, as Ellis dropped to his knees beside her, checked her pulse, gently turned her onto her side. He pulled off his own jacket and folded it under her head. Then he disappeared off-screen and returned moments later with water and what looked like a protein bar from the vending machine. He stayed with her, kneeling on that cold marble floor, until her eyes finally opened. The footage had no audio, but Adrian could see Ellis talking to her, his face close to hers, his expression filled with a grandfatherly concern that made Adrian's throat tighten. He scrolled forward, watching Ellis help Mia to her feet, walk her slowly to the employee break room, sit her down. Then Ellis pulled cash from his own wallet, crumpled bills that probably represented a significant portion of his paycheck, and pressed them into her hand. The timestamp jumped forward 30 minutes. Ellis was leading Mia out to the street, helping her into a taxi, leaning through the window to give the driver instructions. And then, as the taxi pulled away, he simply turned around and went back to work. No fanfare, no report filed, no credit claimed. Adrian paused the footage on a frame of Ellis walking back into the hotel, his shoulders slightly more stooped, his uniform jacket gone. He sat back in his chair, his vision blurring with tears he didn't try to stop. He didn't just save my wife today, Adrian whispered to the empty room, his voice breaking. He saved her before she ever became my wife, before I ever knew she existed, and he never wanted anyone to know. Adrian found Mr. Ellis 2 days later in the same service hallway, as if the old man had been waiting for him. This time, Adrian didn't bring an envelope. He didn't bring offers. He brought only himself, raw, humbled, and desperate for understanding. I saw the footage, Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion he didn't bother hiding. From 7 years ago, I saw what you did for her, what you've always done. Mr. Ellis stopped pushing his cat, his weathered hands gripping the handle a little tighter, but he didn't turn around. She never knew it was you, Adrian continued, stepping closer. She woke up in a clinic with no memory of how she got there, just a vague recollection of someone kind helping her. And you disappeared. Why? Mr. Ellis finally turned, And for the first time, Adrian saw the full weight of sorrow in those tired eyes. Because people like me don't get remembered, Mr. Cole. We do what needs doing and we move on. Adrian shook his head, his throat constricting. Please, I'm begging you. Let me repay you. Anything. A house. A pension. Medical care for the rest of your life. Just tell me what you want and it's yours. For a long moment, Mr. Ellis was silent. Then he gestured down the hallway with a slow, deliberate motion. You see Maria. He nodded toward a housekeeper limping past, her knee wrapped in an elastic bandage she'd bought herself because the hotel's insurance didn't cover physical therapy. She's been working here for 12 years with a torn meniscus. Still shows up every day because she's got 3 kids to feed. He pointed to the stairwell door. Carlos, the dishwasher, has got diabetes. Rations his insulin because he can't afford the prescriptions. And Mr. Daniels, the bellhop who's 71, has got no retirement savings, no health insurance, just tips and a paycheck that barely covers rent. Mr. Ellis looked back at Adrian, and his voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, heavy with decades of accumulated grief. I don't need anything, Mr. Cole. I've made my peace with what I have left. But these people, his voice cracked, they're invisible, just like I am. They hurt in silence. They struggle where no one sees. And no one asks why. He paused, and when he spoke again, every word carried the weight of a wound that had never healed. My wife, she died 11 years ago. Cancer. We couldn't afford the treatments. I lost my medical license, lost our savings fighting a lawsuit I didn't deserve, and by the time we qualified for any help, it was too late. I held her hand while she slipped away, knowing that in a different world, a fairer world, she'd still be here. Adrian's vision blurred. His chest felt like it was caving in. Mr. Ellis took a step closer, his ancient eyes locking onto Adrian's with an intensity that made the billionaire feel small, exposed, stripped of all his armor. So if you really want to repay me, Mr. Cole, if you truly want to honor what I did for your wife, then don't build something for me. His voice steadied, filled now with quiet, unshakable purpose. Build something for them. Create a fund, a clinic, something that makes sure the invisible people don't have to suffer unseen anymore. That's what I want. That's the only thing I want. Adrian Cole, man who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without flinching, who'd faced corporate sharks and hostile takeovers with ice in his veins, broke. Tears spilled down his face, and he didn't wipe them away. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, because in that moment, he finally understood what real gratitude demanded. It wasn't about paying back a debt. It wasn't about grand gestures or public displays. It was about seeing the people everyone else refused to see. It was about making sure that kindness, real kindness, didn't die in the shadows with the people who practiced it most. 3 months later, the Azure Grand Hotel held a gathering unlike any it had seen before. Not a gala for the wealthy. Not a corporate event for investors. This was for the staff, the housekeepers, the dishwashers, the maintenance workers, the people who made the luxury possible but never tasted it themselves. Adrian stood at a podium in the ballroom. But this time, the chairs weren't filled with tuxedos and evening gowns. They were filled with worn uniforms and tired faces that were just beginning to believe something might actually change. Adrian's voice was steady, but his eyes glistened as he spoke. For too long, this hotel, and honestly, my entire company, has operated on the assumption that some people matter more than others. That assumption ends today. He unveiled the Ellis Initiative, comprehensive healthcare for every employee and their families, living wages that didn't force people to choose between rent and medicine, an emergency assistance fund, on-site childcare, and a dedicated medical clinic staffed by professionals who would treat the people who cleaned the rooms with the same care given to those who stayed in them. And I want Mr. Ellis to lead the advisory board, Adrian said, turning to where the old janitor sat in the back row, looking uncomfortable with the attention. Because he understands something I'm only beginning to learn, that dignity isn't given by wealth. It's recognized by compassion. The room erupted in applause, but Mr. Ellis simply nodded, his expression unreadable, his hands folded quietly in his lap. Over the following weeks, things changed. Slowly, then noticeably. Maria got her knee surgery and returned to work without limping for the first time in years. Carlos's insulin was covered, his blood sugar stabilized. Mr. Daniels, the elderly bellhop, finally had a retirement plan that meant he could leave with dignity whenever he chose. The invisible became visible. The voiceless found they had advocates. And Mr. Ellis, who'd spent 11 years blending into walls, suddenly found himself surrounded by people who wanted to thank him, to tell him their stories, to let him know he mattered. But the moment that truly broke him came 6 months later, in a hospital room far different from the emergency wing where Mia had been rushed. This one was filled with flowers and soft light, with the sound of a newborn's cry echoing like a promise kept. Adrian and Mia sat together on the bed, exhausted and radiant, cradling their daughter, a tiny, perfect thing with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. Mr. Ellis stood near the door, having been invited but uncertain if he truly belonged in such an intimate moment. Adrian looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that reaches all the way to the soul. "We wanted you here for this," he said softly, "because we wanted you to meet her." He glanced down at the bundle in his arms. "Her name is Grace Ellis Cole." Mr. Ellis froze. His breath caught. His eyes, those ancient eyes that had witnessed so much pain and loss, filled with tears for the first time anyone in that room had ever seen. You gave her my name." His voice cracked, barely a whisper. Mia reached out her hand, and Mr. Ellis took it, his weathered fingers trembling in hers. "You saved my life twice," she said, her own tears falling freely now. "Once when I was alone and invisible, and once when I had everything to lose. You didn't do it for recognition. You didn't do it for reward. You did it because you saw me, really saw me, when no one else did. And we want our daughter to carry that with her, to remember that the greatest acts of love often come from the quietest hearts." Mr. Ellis couldn't speak. He could only nod, tears streaming down his lined face as he looked at the baby girl who bore his name, a name that had been invisible for so long, now written into a legacy that would outlive him. Adrian stood and placed a hand on the old man's shoulder. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything, for teaching me what truly matters." As Mr. Ellis left the hospital that evening, walking slowly through the parking lot under a sky painted golden purple by the setting sun, he felt something he hadn't felt in over a decade. Not happiness, exactly. His grief was too deep for that word to hold. But something close. Peace, maybe, or purpose rediscovered. The knowledge that his wife's suffering, his own fall from grace, the years of invisibility, none of it had been meaningless. It had all led here, to this moment, to a tiny girl named Grace who would grow up knowing that heroes don't always wear capes or carry fortunes. Sometimes they carry mops. Sometimes they work in shadows. And sometimes, if the world is paying attention, those shadows finally give way to light. Some heroes save lives, but a rare few, the ones who ask for nothing and give everything, save futures.